Hello and welcome to another Creative Edge video blog with me, your host Andrew. And today I thought I'd go back over a little bit of history, as it's 25 years since Adobe Photoshop came into the world. So it's been around for a quarter of a century now, which is incredible to think about. And I thought I'd go back through some of my kind of compositing history, some of my earliest attempts, and kind of show you the progression of where I started to where I am today. I mean, one thing actually before I get into that that I found incredible that I read yesterday was that Adobe Photoshop came out, the first version of Photoshop came out the year after the film The Abyss came out. Now, if you think about the special effects, the kind of the water kind of thing that happens in that, and then you look at where Photoshop started, it's incredible to see where we came from and where we are today. I also watched a great video yesterday by the awesome Terry White, which showed Photoshop version 1. Which was fascinating, and I will link that in the description below. So, a little bit of history for me. I first came across Photoshop in the year 1995, which was the year I was at college. So I just finished sixth form at school and went on to do a year's foundation art course at college. And they had a couple of Macs there with Photoshop on it. I believe it was version 4 or 5, something like that. Difficult to remember now, but that was my... and I remember being fascinated by it. I remember, seeing some of the things that it could do and being absolutely fascinated by what this new program was able to do. And I then used it a couple of times on and off through college and university, but it wasn't really until after I left university that I got my own version of Photoshop, which I believe was version 7. I might have had an earlier version, I'm not sure, and kind of went from there really. And I mean, I used version 7 for years. That was, probably the one I used for the longest amount of time. I didn't upgrade, and yeah, so that's where I kind of started. But I used Photoshop for my artwork back then, as I ended up working in house for a company which produced t-shirts which had artworks printed on them. But my first kind of exposure to compositing photographs actually came through working there, because they produced a catalogue every 3 months with their garments in it, and they had models which they had photographed in their garments, and they needed to be cut out from their background, and then they were, in fact, I'll show you one here. So the model was photographed on a white background. They needed to be cut out from that background so they could go on, so they could go onto the page of the magazine, and also the models were photographed without the print on the t-shirt. The reason being is that the prints never look great when photographed. They look great in real life, but on photographs they never look that great. So a little trick was that we photographed them without the print on, and then in post in Photoshop we could then put on whatever print we want. And it also meant that we could get multiple kind of designs on just a small number of photos, so we weren't limited in what we were doing. And that was my first kind of exposure to compositing, of doing that and doing a lot of that. And that's how I first learned how to cut out models and composite things and use blending modes and do all that kind of thing. So the one I just showed you, this one, is actually from 2008, but I was doing it, years earlier than that. My first composite attempt is probably the word. Was I mean years ago, back when I was younger, I used to do an awful lot of role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of thing. Showing my geek credentials to you now. And I was just coming to the end of doing that, but something that I kind of remembered from one of the games was in this fantasy world was a kind of floating island, and so I decided to have a go at trying to composite something like that together. And this was this attempt here, and this is the earliest composite I can find. There may well be earlier ones, but I can't find them. They could be on older hard drives which are no longer hooked up to my computer, possibly, I don't know. But this is the earliest one I can currently find on my system at the moment. And this was 2005, so 10 years ago. Next, I started... After this, I started using some of the images I took at my job as I got into photography. I started to take the photos of the models in the garments at the company where I worked, and we used to do some fun shots which we would use on the cover of the magazines, of the catalogues, and so I started to do some composites based on those. And so this is the next earliest one I can find. And so this started off life with the models just sat on an office chair on a white background, and I composited in the background and a different chair. And I was really pleased with this back in the day. I mean, I'm still pleased with it. It's still a good image. So that was one of my earliest kind of attempts at compositing with a model. And so I did a few of these. So there's this one from 2008, and again very much along a theme, because the artworks that we were producing for the company were very much on a gothic theme. So hence the images of vampires and things like that. Now, I just started to also around the time, around about 2006, started getting into doing weddings and things like that, and so which leads me on to this one, which is a twist on the bridal photography that you kind of see out there. Decided to put them into a war zone. This was influenced by some other images by another photographer over in the States that I saw, and I thought they looked great, so I had an attempt at doing something similar. Then, I mean, basically, through the years, up until 2013, I was doing compositing on and off, just little bits here and there, never really pushing it, just, I had them in my portfolio, but they weren't a major part of my portfolio. I didn't really push them very hard. I was busy doing either artwork or weddings, and I kind of regret it that I didn't push it earlier. I could have pushed this, an awful lot earlier, and really been well ahead of the game by this point. But hindsight is always 20/20 and all that. But I am very grateful for what the past year and a half has kind of brought me, as I have started to push it. But it just goes to show that You never know what's going to happen and where your life's going to go. But anyway, so I was doing other kind of composites. So this one here is that's Ruby, a model called Ruby True, which I did a short latex shoot with, and I gave her an exploding bum, I suppose. But that always got a few comments when people saw it, which was good. And next one, here's another from 2009, which is more of the models from my time working in-house as an illustrator. The next one, this is based on a artwork which I loved, and I wanted to do my own version of the kind of 50-foot woman thing. I've still got ideas along these lines of things I want to try with this, which I may well get to one day. But I mean, this was one of the things that came from a shoot that I did. It's all right. I have other ideas for this kind of concept, which I'd like to try at some point. Next is another bridal one. This one, again, it's a little bit kind of an experiment, I suppose, mixing my art and my photography. I painted those wings onto the image behind the bride. Just, I don't know, it was a bit of an experiment, I suppose. The next one, this was actually a model shoot, and this was actually the model's idea. Of doing kind of the 7 deadly sins, and as we were doing the shoot, I had the idea of doing this kind of composite of all of the sins put together in one photo, which I think turned out pretty well. And then the next two are, these are probably the first two that I actually got paid to do in terms of composites, and they're both CD covers, hence the square format. And I had done kind of illustration work for this guy's CD covers in the past, and so I decided I wanted to kind of mix my photography and my art a little bit, because it created an interesting effect. And so I did this first one that you can see here, and then this next one. And they turned out really well. I was really pleased with them, especially this second one, which I was really happy with. And I don't know, I mean, this was probably my first kind of my first kind of exposure to this is probably something more than just a curiosity in my portfolio. This is, the first time I was kind of looking at these as something that I might want to do more of, but it never really progressed from that point, which is 2011 for this one, until I got into 2013, and due to some circumstances of that year, I had a bit of a long think about what I wanted to do with my photography, and what it was I really enjoyed about photography, and the elements that I enjoyed, which was basically compositing and doing something artistic and creative with my images, which led to this one, which was something that I was actually the second composite of the recent ones I've been doing. It was the second one I put out, but this was the one which kind of cemented in my mind that this is what I wanted to do, because it went down really well. It was very well received. It's been shared and printed and published now all over the place. It's probably the shot which kind of I'm probably most well known for, and I'm incredibly kind of grateful to it. and Tabitha, and he prefers to be known as Spider Trooper. I won't give away his real name. These two cosplayers were great on the day to shoot, and as you know, I've worked with Tabitha an awful lot, and yeah, so I'm incredibly grateful for what this image has brought me. And then this led to, so this was 2013, and then 2014 was kind of filled with loads and loads of composites. Here's one example. And now we're into 2015, and here's one that I've done just recently of the amazing Riddle. And so the future's bright. The future's orange. Yeah, you know, it's come a long way. You know, looking back from kind of 2005 to, you know, when I first started doing composites to kind of, you know, 10 years later, and where I am today and what I'm doing today, and, you know, it's great. I'm incredibly grateful for everything that, you know, this kind of stuff has brought me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where things go in the future. So this has been an awfully long and rambling video now, so apologies for that, but yes, it's 25 years of Photoshop. So celebrate that. Here's to another 25 years of Photoshop. God knows where we'll be in 25 years' time from now. Hopefully, you know, I can continue doing these things and do more and more of them, which would be great. So that's it for this week. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching. Really appreciate it. I will continue to do videos, and I'll try to do them weekly, as I normally do. And so, yeah, thank you. You know, remember all the usual things: subscribe, share, like the video, all that kind of thing. And also Patreon. You know, I'd love to get some more of you on Patreon and share some of the behind-the-scenes stuff with you, which you don't necessarily get to see. That would be great. So yeah, that's it for now, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you. Bye. Fancy being awesome and becoming a patron? It's easy. Follow the link on the screen or in the description below to go to my Patreon page. Click on Become a Patron. On the next page, choose the amount you wish to pledge per composite image, and make sure you choose your reward level, such as the $1 thank you. Click on the confirmation button. On this page, you can then set your maximum monthly amount. So if you only want to spend $1, approximately 70 pence per month, put that in there. Choose your payment method and click pledge. It's really that easy. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.